I promise that I will stop gatekeeping fatness when mid-sized and other non-fat people make the decision to start listening, uplifting, and prioritizing the experiences of super and infinifat people. Once you do that and commit to body liberation, fat activism, and dismantling the body hierarchy, you can call yourself whatever the fuck you want. I don't give a shit.
Oh, did you hear that? Did you hear that, everyone? They said once you fall in line with fat acceptance and start normalizing being super fat, then we'll leave you alone. And you'll be allowed to use your own terminology and exist on the internet without being called fatphobic. Oh my god, so generous. If someone wants to call themselves fat, that's fine. If they don't, they don't. Leave people alone.
I've had a few conversations with folks in comment sections about my feelings on the term midsize, and for some reason I have a bee in my bonnet, and so I'm gonna talk about it here. Long story short, when I hear midsize, I hear some undealt with fatphobia. I understand there's a need to want to be able to find other folks who share a similar experience to you based on what your body type or size is, but the thing is there's already language that exists to talk about the fatness of your body in ways that are linked to fat liberation. It's right here. It's the fatness spectrum. So small fat, mid fat, super fat, and infinifat. And each one of these categories inherently speaks to a type of experience based on what your body size is. So when someone says mid-size, all I can hear is that they are trying their best to distance themselves from fatness. And whether or not in terms of your size, you're in straight sizes or plus sizes, this purposeful attempt to distance yourself from fatness is fatphobic.
She said there's already language that exists, but what if someone found the mid-size term and mid-size terminology before your fatness spectrum? How does that make them fatphobic if they don't even know your preferred terminology? And when they do discover the cesspool that is fat acceptance, they're expected to change their terminology to appease you or risk being called fatphobic? That's the gist of this entire video. Use our terminology, use our fatness spectrum, or get chastised for discriminating against us because you're not fighting for our liberation. It's fine if people use the term midsize because it's the terminology they found first, or because it's the community they like better, or they really are trying to distance themselves from fatness. That's not fatphobia, that's not discrimination, and again, leave people alone.
I don't know what came over me yesterday where I decided that I finally wanted to give my opinion on the term midsize. I'm going to give a little bit of some observations from yesterday, but let me say something first. I am not body positive, I am fat positive, and I support fat liberation. End of story. I say half of the folks commenting were just glad to hear that there actually was other language available to them that is rooted in fat liberation. The other half of commenters are straight-sized white women who seem to be just really invested in arguing that they face oppression in some way. The fat spectrum and fat liberation are about actual societal oppressions faced by fat people, not just the ways that you are made to feel about your body because we live in a fatphobic society. Let me be clear, you can face personal hardships in your life and also still benefit from different types of privilege, just like when people talk about racism. And I'm just really curious about the white women in my comment sections who are putting so much energy into advocating for the word midsize instead of working against fatphobia.
Okay, something I want to address with this video is how arbitrary this fat spectrum chart is. This woman said there are a bunch of straight-sized people in her comments, but in reality there were a bunch of mid-sized people that found the video because she used the midsize hashtag. Mid-sized people are usually a size 8 to 16, and the fat spectrum chart says that a torrid size 0 to a 1 is a small fat. That's a size 10, 12, or 14, which is definitely mid-size. The chart also categorizes 1X and 2X in small fat, but that's also about a size 14 to 16. So the small fat category takes up basically all of the mid-sizes. But she's telling all these people in her comments that they are straight-sized and not oppressed. If fat oppression does exist, wouldn't the size 12s that identify as midsize still be oppressed even if they don't call themselves a small fat? And where is the cutoff between when someone is oppressed because of fat oppression and when they aren't? Because imagine someone who is a size 12 or 14, they're tall, and they have an hourglass shape. Would the fat acceptance community accept her as a small fat that faces oppression? Absolutely not, even though she falls directly into the category on their own chart that they demand everyone else uses. My point is that these categories are so poorly enforced by the fat acceptance community, Yet when anyone who doesn't follow their sizing chart, they're fatphobic and they're distancing themselves from fatness. It's such a wild double standard. I want to show an example of what mid-sized people actually post on TikTok, so that's what this next clip is.
This is what a mid-sized girl looks like at the gym. I'm 5'4" and 180 pounds. But this is also what I look like. Stop worrying about your weight and learn to love to move your body.
There are a lot of these types of videos under the mid-size hashtag. So this woman can't consider herself fat or a small fat because the fat acceptance community would lose their minds. But she's also not small or skinny either. My guess is that based on her height, she's probably a size 10 or 12, maybe even a 14. So what's she supposed to call herself? I'm sure fat activists would have some convoluted answer to that question, but it doesn't matter because if you want to call this type of content fatphobic, you're either jealous or bored, and either way, it's your own problem to deal with. Leave people alone.
So I've had a few people asking me recently what my thoughts are on mid-size and the term mid-size, and I've got a few minutes, so let's talk about it. So I always thought that size 14 and 16 were mid-sizes because they are more often included in straight sizes, but are also considered plus size. So they're quite literally mid-sizes. But I'm also abundantly aware that the term mid-size has been used by thin white women to co-opt the body positivity movement. And this is done in a multitude of ways. I just stitched a video where you can see this done, but it's also, saying that's not fat, that's your uterus, you go queen, or twisting and turning their bodies to create roles and saying, look how brave I am, and then stamping the term mid-size on it. And they also do this by distancing themselves from fatness and the idea of being fat. And by doing this, they are furthering anti-fat rhetoric and going against exactly what body positivity was intended for from the start. So then at the end of the day, you just have all of these thin white women who don't experience the discrimination you face with a fat body that have created this environment of faux oppression that does far more bad than good. So even though I think at one point the term mid-size did serve a purpose for a particular group of people, I think it does more harm than good. And I think we need to drop it and get rid of it.
She mentioned there are a bunch of videos of mid-size or smaller people showing their natural bodies and saying that they're not actually fat and how that's fatphobic. But unretouched images of women's bodies, whether it be skinny or not, are pretty rare in media, and retouched photos often make women look smaller than they actually are. So I don't see anything wrong with people making content that shows what normal bodies look like and showing that women's bodies actually do have more fat than the average body shown in the media. She also said by distancing yourself from fatness, you are furthering anti-fat rhetoric and undermining what the body positivity movement was for. The premise of this entire argument is that you need to be okay with being fat. If you aren't okay with being fat, whether you are skinny or fat right now, if you aren't okay with identifying with being fat, then you are part of the problem. But some people aren't, be it for health reasons or aesthetic reasons. And that's not discrimination, that's not bigotry. And the body positivity movement wasn't meant to normalize fat bodies. That's fat acceptance. Stop gatekeeping who gets to be body positive.
This video is for my bestie Alex, who requested that I add mid-size phobic into the skinny phobic trend, and I support it. I made a couple of videos back in August about how I don't like the mid-size trend. It gives me fat phobic vibes, makes me feel weird, and it's only gotten worse. Imagine that. I know that everyone feels insecure. I understand, and I firmly believe that everyone has the right to feel good about themselves. However, this sound, girl, the lyric, no matter your size, 8 to 16 is really the one that gets me going. Because most plus size, the small fats, start at about a 14, but you're claiming that size 16 is mid-size, so maybe you should just say that your biggest fear is being fat and being plus size. Because that might be actually what's going on here. And that feels a little inherently fatphobic to me, don't it, though? Instead of trying to create all these new identities, why don't we just demolish them all?
Did she just say demolish all identities after talking for a minute straight about how people need to properly identify with her own New Age fat spectrum chart? Did I hear that right? And maybe someone that's a size 16 doesn't want to call themselves a small fat because that's weird, or they think the fat spectrum chart is stupid, not because they hate themselves or even want to be smaller. This sentiment that if you don't want to call yourself fat, then you hate your body is just untrue. Some people, and I would actually say most people, don't want to identify with being fat. Also, let me throw out a hypothetical here. What if someone is a size 16 in some brands, a 14 in another, and a 12 in another? I'm pretty sure y'all would be pissed if she called herself fat because a size 12 isn't fat. But she can't call herself mid-size because that's fatphobic. But if she calls herself skinny, you'll be like, how dare she distance herself from fatness? So how does she win? I don't know, die, I guess.
The whole mid-size body positivity movement thing has been kind of rubbing me the wrong way. Bodies like that are valid, are beautiful. People who have bodies that fall into the so-called mid-size range can totally have body image issues in a society as fatphobic as ours. But the whole thing reeks to me of internalized fatphobia and an attempt to distance themselves from being associated with actual fat plus-size people, especially because the upper edge of that range does technically fall within plus size. And the plus-size representation is usually people that are like a size 16, i.e. the smallest version of fat. Internalized fatphobia is very real. I've definitely been there when I was a little bit smaller and I couldn't cross that bridge. But the whole thing feels to me like it is that as a movement from people who already have thin privilege and want more.
First of all, she said actual plus-size people. Is a size 14 not plus size? What is the cutoff between what you consider plus size and non-plus sized? Again, it's so arbitrary. To me, this entire video reeks of jealousy. She said that the mid-size trend was made because of internalized fat phobia, and its purpose is people trying to distance themselves from, quote, actual fat plus-size people like herself. But then she also said that some mid-size people are plus size, so I think she just wants the size 16s to identify as plus size and nothing else. The vibe I get from this video is I'm jealous that I can't be part of this group, and I can't really process my feelings about that, so I'll turn this resentment around and say that the mid-sized people created this group specifically to keep people like me out because of their own bigotry. That way, I can blame them for my problems, and it's not on me to come to terms with my own body issues and insecurity.
I'm so tired of getting on fucking social media in general and seeing mid-sized bodies being marketed as plus-size bodies, which is why for the most part I don't call myself plus-size anymore. I call myself fat, because quite literally mid-sized bodies have taken over the plus-size like industry and movement. And then whenever anybody who is fat and actually plus size has anything to say about it and isn't the best friend, sweetie cutie pie that we've all been marketed to be in the media, y'all get real mad about it. I do not give a fuck if it comes off as gatekeeping. I do not care. Like, we are the ones who like have to deal with the actual oppression from this shit, while y'all benefit from the marketing from it. Fuck off.
The level of animosity in this group is difficult to watch sometimes. They said mid-size is being marketed as plus size, but like, aren't most mid-size people plus size? It's a size 8 to 16, and most of that range is plus size. Also, I don't understand this idea that mid-size people have taken over plus-size representation. Like, there was never a time when there was more representation for sizes 16 and above compared to right now, in 2022. So how have mid-size people taken over? I don't get it. I don't get this argument.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but the term mid-size is just whitewashing small fats, which is a language that's already existed in the body positive and body liberation community to describe people who experience lesser levels of discrimination and inaccessibility because they can fit in some plus size things and some straight size or regular size things like an XL. Being a small fat doesn't mean that you are any less valid as a fat person with a bigger body. But it does mean that your experiences are very different and less marginalized than those with even bigger bodies. Those are just the facts, kids.
Whitewashing is a terrible comparison for this community. It's not whitewashing. More like people not wanting to identify too much with their body size, but still love themselves. And as I said before, this chart is used so arbitrarily. If that woman I showed earlier in the gym identified as a small fat, there would for sure be someone in her comments saying her waist is too small and her body is too hourglass shaped to be oppressed. She also said that being a small fat doesn't make you less valid, but one, everything in these videos says otherwise, and considering how poorly this community treats the midsize community, why would any of them want to join your movement? And 2, some midsize people aren't fat by your own standards, so why are you trying to make them identify with being fat?